So let's get started. I'm super excited to be introducing Jared for our workshop here today. Gosh, Jared and I think, got connected because I asked for some of your slides for a previous offsite workshop you did. And that's how we got connected, found out that Jared is an expert on offsites, so much so that he has founded and created the company offsite.com. And I'm so excited to be talking about this topic today because I know a lot of chiefs of staff are the ones responsible for planning offsites. Many times it may be your first time doing something like this. And as with most stuff that chiefs of staff do, you're just kind of given the project and told to figure it out. So we're going to talk a little bit about what makes a great offsite. Jared's an expert who's worked with many chiefs of staff before, so he'll be able to offer insights into all of the different planning aspects. And so without any further ado, Jared, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. And hi, everyone. I'm going to get my screen shared here. Unfortunately, it's going to stop our Drake song, but I think we're done with Drake for now. Everyone can see my screen. Yes. Awesome. So yeah, I'm Jared, like the gallery of jewelry, not like the subway guy because he's an asshole. And I'm here today to talk about the anatomy of a great offsite. If you love that title, it's Clara's credit. If you don't like it, it's my fault. And so, I want to just jump right into it. Really, we created this presentation for you, and I created Offsite for you. You're a chief of staff, a people leader at your company, and you are literally my ideal client profile. And this is screenshots from Slack. This is all we think about all day long. We're trying to be the most customer friendly company in our space. And so, we work primarily with remote and hybrid companies, chiefs of staff at that company, but also EAs, people leaders, anyone running their team, essentially. We work primarily with venture funded startups, but also high growth companies, and then occasionally like a hospital and a hedge fund and private equity, some nonprofits. So we've been able to do hundreds of offsites now all around the world, in 17 different countries or so. But yeah, we literally think about what are your problems related to offsites or just in general. You have like 17 jobs in one, and they keep growing in terms of scope. We think about and obsess about what your goals are for offsites in particular, what your needs are out of offsites, and then fears, limitations, things like your principles possibly holding you back from accomplishing your goals, even though they're the ones that asked you to plan an offsite in the first place. So I get it. And I'm also here to learn more. So anytime you want to reach out to me, just email me. We also have a free Slack community called Team Retreat Planning, which maybe Clara, you can put in the chat. It's just teamretreatplanning.slack.com. Totally free. You can join us. But yeah, just to give a super quick background on me, and maybe why you should listen to me other than Clara saying I'm awesome, which is appreciated, Clara. I was an early employee at a company called 15Five, which if you don't know 15Five, their biggest competitors are Lattice and Culture Amp. So one of the leading employee engagement and performance management platforms out there. Today, they're about 250 employees, and they're one of our clients. The CEO is an investor, the co-founders an advisor, but I was employee 7, maybe 12 years ago. And so I got to attend offsites at a pioneering remote first company, and one that used offsites over the last decade to build award-winning culture, help thousands of other companies build exceptional culture. I left 15Five after 2 years, took a 7-year speaker, author, consultant turn. And so basically for a decade, between working at 15Five and then doing TED and TEDx talks, writing books, running conferences of 20 to 100 people all around the world, I basically was planning offsites, speaking at offsites, attending offsites for a decade going into the pandemic. And so during the pandemic, I was hypothesizing that every company was going to go remote or hybrid at some point. They would all then plan offsites as sort of a second order effect to bring their teams together. It's really hard running any company, let alone a remote first company. So things like employee engagement, retention, alignment are really challenging, as you all know, in this current environment. If you want to add like quiet quitting to that and a global pandemic and like a loneliness epidemic to like just running a company in general, this last few years has probably been one of the hardest periods in recorded human history to do things like employee engagement and retention. But offsites are one of the tools that remote and hybrid companies use to try and solve that problem. And so started a company around that. I was also betting that there should be a software platform to power all that. And so that's ultimately what we're building. We are primarily a service business today, and we're starting to build software and ship usable software products. But as a service, like Offsite as a service company, we've worked with well over 100 companies and different teams all around the world. I think 17 different countries we've planned offsites for 7 or 8 people up to hundreds of people. And so that's why you should trust me on this topic in particular. But enough about me. Let's talk about you guys. You're here to learn about the anatomy of a great offsite. Again, credit to Clara for the title. And so kind of at a high level, what we're going to talk about here is, we're going to start with why, sort of Simon Sinek style. And then we're going to talk about where over 50% of your budget is going on offsites, which is your venue and travel. Then we're going to talk about bringing your team to the fold, and that'll prompt a discussion about your principals and your co-founders, which I saw in the chat was sort of one of the big challenges around this is sort of dealing with your team around planning offsites. And then we'll get into agenda creation, all that other fun stuff. At any point in time, if you have questions, put it in the chat. I can't see the chat without awkwardly stopping my presentation, so Clara's going to monitor it. And if I should stop and address something, she'll just unmute and ask away on your behalf. So yeah, everyone good with that?
Awesome. Great, Jared.
I can only see like 4 of you plus Clara in my view. So yeah, like maybe you're one of the 4, maybe not. But all right, let's start with why. So why are we planning offsites in the first place? Everyone has a different reason for planning offsites for their companies. At the sort of most macro level, it is part of the toolkit, in my opinion, of running a remote or hybrid company. You have to plan offsites if you want any meaningful culture for your company. And there are some like renegade experiments out there where like the company never meets and they don't do any meetings and they're never on Zoom and it's all contractors. But for a vast majority of us, we're a social species. We want to meet our colleagues in person, and using offsites is the way to build trust and intimacy. It's the way to keep people engaged, do strategic planning, all that. And so if we sort of drill down a little bit, there will be different objectives for each offsite that you're planning. And every team is going to want different things out of an offsite. And so as a chief of staff, you need to think strategically about why are you investing money into these offsites, but also why are you investing your team's time into each individual offsite? And so this is a great place with your co-founders, with your principal, to think about, is this more of a team building oriented offsite? Is it more of a strategic planning oriented offsite? Like doing OKRs for the next quarter or an annual planning session for the following year? Is it a board meeting, which is all strategy? Is it a brainstorming session for like a marketing team, or is it a hackathon for the engineering team? There could be a mix of these in an agenda as well. It might be half strategic planning, half team building. There might be customer facing events thrown into your cadence of offsites. And to me, an offsite is anything that involves like a room block at a venue and some of your team coming together. We also plan customer conferences and like CEO peer group meetings for YPO and things like that. But think about your objectives first, and then you want to think about when in the year it makes sense to insert that into your cadence or your rhythm of business. And so offsites can kick off quarters. They can kick off, a year. We do a lot of sales kickoffs in January, February to sort of get sales teams motivated. And then we'll do President's Club sort of the end of Q1 going into Q2 to sort of celebrate last year's wins, but keep the producers still working in Q1 to start the year off right. We're also doing a lot of all hands in the summer and fall, but before the holidays. So you want to think about where this fits into your plan and how you can strategically leverage these offsites to accomplish your goals. As an example cadence for a 100-person company, you might have a all hands meeting once per year. And let's say that's in the fall. So September, October, November. You'll probably have quarterly executive team retreats. And then if you're a sales heavy organization, you might have your sales kickoff and or President's Club meeting. you might have a customer conference, but we've also worked with companies that are more engineering oriented, and either the engineering teams like never want to meet and they only want to just work and take their engineering tickets, or they want to meet a lot because that's the best way for them to get aligned and build. And so not this is definitely not like a one size fits all thing, and I think we're in a really interesting point in time where we're all trying to figure out what the optimal cadence is. And the answer is sort of, it depends on your budget, your culture, and what you're trying to accomplish from a business standpoint. But this is a sample cadence. I find it really interesting that Brian Chesky came out sometime last year and basically said, like, Airbnb is going to be remote always. And one of the core tenets of being remote is that he basically said, if you're an employee at Airbnb, you're probably going to attend a quarterly offsite, if not, 2 offsites a quarter. And so we're all trying to figure this out at 11 people, which is the size of the offsite team, or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Everyone's going to have a different cadence. Every offsite's going to be different, even if the same exact team is meeting on a quarterly basis. There's going to be different experiences, and we need to plan those offsites differently as a result. So now let's talk about like actually starting to plan, right? Like let's just imagine a world where you have the perfect rhythm of business. You have this totally mapped out. You're masterful at understanding the objectives for your offsite. Now we have to actually start executing these offsites. And so where I would encourage you to spend a majority of your time is in deciding what venue you're going to have your offsite at, and giving yourself enough time to actually negotiate those decisions intelligently. Where you have your offsite is going to dictate all the travel costs. It's going to dictate the activities, and it's really going to dictate sort of the environment and the vibe in which you're inserting your team for this experience. So I believe at the end of the day, you can, like, if you get the right people in the room, you could be in any environment and it's going to be a great experience. But you don't want to leave anything to chance. Let's get the optimal environment if we can, and think about what places are going to have great Wi-Fi, what places are going to be close to major airports if you care about sort of access and ease of travel. Or maybe you want to put people in a completely remote area so that they can't talk to friends or like meet anyone in the city, but they just are stuck with each other 3 or 4 hours outside of other humans. So again, this is a very important decision, as you all probably know, and you're obsessing over. We found that this takes like weeks of time, if not a month plus, to find the right venue, and you don't know like who to talk to at hotels, things like that. So it was one of the biggest problems we started working on. You might have seen some of this in front of you, so I won't speak to it too much, but definitely plan ahead. Like the more time you give yourself, the better rates you're going to get with hotels, less stress it's going to be on yourself. And you can tell your team that you're planning offsites, which will, at a minimum, like give them a chance to not plan their own personal travel around that and to not take PTO around the offsite, but also like keep them engaged and give them something to look forward to until the offsite actually occurs. So, if you keep planning offsites in like 6 to 12 months, like people are going to want to stay at the company, so even if they're going through a challenging time, they're like, well, I got that trip to Miami coming up. I'm like, if I just power through, then we can go to South Beach, and I could see like Samantha from my team. Really excited about that. And so these are some of the reasons for having offsites and sort of planning ahead, in addition to just saving time and money. Also, the biggest thing you have at your disposal when going to hotels is you can spend more money with your venue, and then they'll give you better rates. So you'll get better treatment, better discounts if you're committing to food and beverage, rooms, activities, AV, all at the same place, versus trying to just do rooms and then go elsewhere for meeting space and then go to restaurants and all that. So we'll get into all this. We're going to spend a lot of time on it because it's important. Any questions so far, Clara, that we're deeming super important?
I think we can answer a lot of these questions, but I'm seeing a lot of intention, like how do we figure out what the best why is? If you want to dig into that a little bit, and talk a little bit about, which of those is appropriate for an offsite, or is it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, the answer is it depends, and I will address that shortly, I promise. So let's I'll keep going with the party here. just some data. One of the questions that we get asked a lot is, what should I budget for an offsite? And so we're finding that our average client is spending $2,200 per person per offsite, all in, inclusive of the fee that we charge, which is a $250 per person per offsite flat fee for end-to-end planning. Sometimes it's lower if it's like a bigger group. And sometimes this is, $1,500 to $1,800 per person if there's half the group that's sort of in a city, and then the other half the company is flying into that city, and they only have to pay for half the hotel rooms for the group, and like they don't have to pay as much travel. Sometimes it's like $5,000 per person because it's Google VP's gone wild, and hopefully there's no like chief of staff from Google joining us for this chat. But this is the average. We're obviously in a price sensitive time in the market right now as well. But you can accomplish a lot with that budget. And again, most of that budget is going to go to the venue decision and the travel to get there. So just to give you an example budget, this is sort of what we're seeing from the Awesome company, which is a hypothetical company here. You can see that we kept it to less than $2,000 per person in this sample scenario. And that was including like a conservative estimate for flights. This was for 2 nights, 3 days. And certainly like how long you plan the offsite is going to factor into the budget. Also like the meals and the activities, like these are all negotiable items. You could also see here that we included a speaker / facilitator. We included a photographer. We included like additional meeting space that you could probably, the meeting space we got comped from the hotel in this example. But these are the things that you want to think through as you're planning an offsite. And just to give you sort of an example of what this looks like in reality, like we planned an offsite for a company called Flex. It's about 160 people. And like you can see how detailed we got in sort of a run of show, rooming list, action list to like plan the offsite with their team, managing all the vendors and contracts and whatnot. But budget is sort of what I wanted to speak to, and really just like trying to get ahead of budgeting and think through everything that you might have to pay for upfront. And then being able to have that conversation with your team, being like, hey, is this approved? Because we're probably going to have to, we're going to have to pay for flights, but like, what if someone's flights get delayed? Like, do we have any contingency for that? Are we giving people a per diem while they're traveling to get meals or coffee, or are we not doing that? If so, are we doing that with Uber credits? Are we giving them Brex cards? How are we doing that? We got rooms. What if people are bringing plus ones? Like, are we covering the plus one? Are they covering the plus one? How do we get the money for that to the hotel? And these are questions you can ask the hotel as well, and get them to work with you, especially if you're bringing all this money to them. Got to think about taxes. There's savings in certain cities. Like we got comped room nights from this hotel in New Orleans. The city of New Orleans had a rebate that saved this client almost $2,000. You got to think about Ubers to and from, or public transit. And you have to like tell the team to take public transit if you want to save money. You really just got to think through every scenario. Probably still have a float. Do you want to have gratuities? These are kind of all the decisions we're thinking through with clients on a day-to-day basis, like, and then really getting really creative if we want to stay within a certain budget, but have it be really nice, even like drink tickets instead of an open bar to sort of save money there. And so, real life example ended up being less than $2,000. It's actually less when if the company was able to successfully go to all their employees and get clawbacks on things like that, or not use up all their contingency, like it would have been even less. So it's totally possible to have an amazing experience and not break the bank. And I would argue it's definitely worth the investment. And you might be wondering, like, how do we make the decision on where to go? Well, that's where Offsite comes in. But first, I'll give you another tool, just so it's not completely overly promotional here. We work with a company called Allfly as a channel partner of ours. Clients who work with us have the option of working with them. They don't need to. Like sometimes they're working with Travel Perk or Navan or some other provider, or they want to plan their own flights. But this is a completely free tool. Meetings.allflight.io/forecast. Basically, you can put in where you're thinking of having your offsite. or maybe even do this 2 or 3 times to compare Miami to New Orleans to Los Angeles, then you can plug in where everyone's flying in from, and then get an estimate for how much the flights are going to cost. And so I like this because, especially the larger the team gets, flights could determine where you go or not. You might be able to save thousands or tens of thousands of dollars by choosing one city over another. And so you want to factor that into your decision on where to go. And then Claire, maybe you could put this link in the chat for everyone.
Yes, I will do that.
Awesome. So yeah, it's a completely free tool from Allfly. And then Offsite has our first software product. We have been planning offsites as a service, end-to-end service model, with a little bit of like tech enablement on the back end, so I don't drive my team nuts. But ultimately, we're building software. The first piece of software we have is sort of what looks like Airbnb for finding your offsite venue, and there's no cost to use our tool as well. So you can just make an account at offsite.com, tell us sort of where you want to go, how big your group is, all that fun stuff. And then when you log in, I would recommend going to My Offsite. You can give us sort of the basics of budget. You can name the offsite in particular. So if it's like marketing team meeting, you can denote that compared to other offsites you might plan with us. Then you can go to onboarding. You could tell us, if you need meeting space or not. And then do you want indoor, outdoor? Do you need hybrid capabilities? You can ask about AV and sort of specify your needs. You can ask for event insurance or not. Meeting days. This is super fancy. You could tell us like when you actually need meeting space during your offsite. And then you could tell us sort of the objectives for your offsite, activities that you're thinking about. And it's okay if you don't know all this to begin with. This part is really important to send requests for proposals or RFPs to hotels. Because again, if you're negotiating your meeting space, your AV, food and beverage, things like that, all at the same time, you might get better rates. But also, like, you can't go to a hotel if they don't have adequate meeting space, or if they have adequate meeting space, but they don't have availability. So when you're sending RFPs to hotels, you need to know these things. And so we're empowering you to do that through the tool. So you fill out all that, and then, you can start searching the venue to your heart's content, or searching the platform, sorry. Let's say you want to go to Miami with 50 people. You might say your capacity is 50. You'd go southeast. Our system would load great properties for you. And boom, you have all these different options. And you could just sort of pick one, check it out, see all the pretty pictures. Basically, it's Airbnb. So we just wanted to help you save, weeks and weeks of time in finding the proper offsite venue, and then also save you money. We're typically getting 20% or more in room block rate discounts from hotels for our clients. And so this is a tool you can use. Again, there's no cost to sign up. If you were to book something through our marketplace, we charge a small service fee, but that would be clearly delineated in any proposals you get back. And like, if we're saving you 20% or more and we're charging a 7% service fee, like, you win on the time and money scale. And you get an amazing place for your team. But again, you don't need us to save all this money. Like, when you're talking to hotels, whether you find them on Google or some other site, you can just ask for discounts, and you should know that you should be able to get 20+% off on your room block, and get discounts or concessions on other things, especially if you're planning ahead, especially if you're bundling some of your services, and you want to make sure that you're going to the right place. If you're planning between multiple cities and you have some flexibility, that's even better, because then you can start negotiating with multiple hotels in the same city, but you can also negotiate multiple venues across different regions, and you might be able to save even more. So plan ahead and choose wisely. But yeah, that's my opening salvo. This is where we're going to get into some of the intentionality conversation. But anything else that came up, Clara, that we should talk about first?
No, I think everyone's very excited about the all fly link.
Yeah,
So that's going to be great. And yes,
crowd
definitely.
favorite.
And
Um,
definitely look at all the beautiful venues. If you are in the team retreat Slack, there's new venues being added all the time, and the photos themselves are beautiful. So even if you're not planning an offsite, you might want to take a vacation there.
yeah, our Instagram is absolute fire. There's only like 60 people following it, but maybe you'll be the 61st. And pretty pictures galore. All right, but let's get back to it. So here's all things keeping your team engaged, certainly starting with your execs and your principals. Um, there is a right way to plan an offsite, and it's sort of like the measure twice, cut once model. To me, you start with your objectives for the offsite, the why, then you think about your budget, get buy-in on that. Then you find a venue that's going to fit into that budget, and you sort of create that high-level budget, like I showed you the example of. Um, then let's assume you book your venue. Then you want to send a pre-offsite feedback form to your team, which we'll talk about in a second. Have your team start planning their travel, so on and so forth. The pre-offsite feedback form is the way to sort of keep things concise and tight with your team. I prefer a more dictatorial model for planning offsites, especially if you have a larger company or a larger team that you're planning for. Like, you as the chief of staff and your executives should be on the same page, and you're going to take care of 90% of the team's concerns, because like you have the best pulse on culture, and like everyone's sensitivities for the most part. So I would recommend just making the decision in terms of where you're going. If you start polling your team before you pick a venue, then you're going to have 17 different cities to look at, and people are going to start showing you venues, and those venues are going to be great for weddings, and they're going to be great for personal travel, but they may not have everything you need for an offsite. So you make the decision, with your principal. That's my recommendation. If you're going to invite your team leaders or department leaders to start planning their own offsites, I would perhaps give them a guide of how to think about this, or show them like free tools like Offsite or Allfly. I think in the future we'll sort of have different ways to save agenda templates and save venue searches and then share it with different people on your team. But that's like for 2024 from our product roadmap. Right now, really just think about keeping it tight with your team. Pre-offsite feedback form is your opportunity to ask for dietary preferences, travel sensitivities, all that fun stuff. If you want to remind them that this is a company trip, and like show them the employee handbook and be like, "Did you read the employee handbook?" Like, "Yes, I read it." That's not a bad idea. And then things I care even more about are things like asking an employer net promoter score before and after the offsite, or any other metrics that you want to track internally. We have some that we recommend to our team, sort of like a connectedness to your colleagues score, a question about like how excited are you by your company's future, how committed are you to the company's core values, whatever standard or whatever questions you want to ask. It's good to just ask these before an offsite, after an offsite, and then get smarter over time. You can keep asking this throughout the cadence of offsites, and hopefully your employer net promoter score keeps going up over time instead of down or stagnant. And so, really want to think intentionally about that pre-offsite feedback form. Encourage everyone to fill it out. And I would do this before you plan your agenda, because you want potentially to get feedback on activity preferences. Do people want something more active? Do they want to be more relaxed? You may want to ask them, like, what's the biggest problem that you're hoping we solve at the offsite? Or you might be like, what's the biggest thing you want to brainstorm at the offsite? And then you might create sessions around that. And so this is a great opportunity to learn about your team, start dialogue months before an offsite even occurs, let alone like programming for the offsite. So pretty easy. I guess we talked about executives. You guys know your principles better than I do. I know even as a founder of a company like Offsite, for our own offsites, sometimes I will delay giving my team what they need to plan. And so I really think it's, by planning ahead, you're going to give yourself more time to adjust for a principal not giving you what you need. But also you can explain sort of this process to them, be like, hey, if you give me the right, framework, in advance, we can save a lot of money here. We could save a lot of time. If you start sort of adding up as the time that you're planning the offsite and show them like, if you make a decision here and you stick to the decision, like I will spend 10 or 20 hours on this offsite versus 50 to 100 hours, they'll see that as money. Like they can do basic math, hopefully. And same with your team, like, take everyone's salaries, times it by 20 or 30 hours on the offsite. Like that's the biggest investment you're making is your team's time and your culture. And so just explain to them like alignment here, just the two of us or the three of us, we'll save a lot of time, we'll save a lot of money, and we'll keep the train moving. Otherwise, like we risk having poor performance with this offsite, and like things could go off the rails, and like our culture could be impacted by it, let alone like your sanity as a chief of staff. You got other things to do. So, all right, mid workshop recap. If you want to go into the chat and put like number one takeaway so far, that would be amazing to see. And I'll actually open up the chat and check it out. But I would love your feedback. Like what's the number one thing so far that you're taking away from this? All fly. Yep. That's nothing
Jared,
that you, Jared, just some other company.
While people are putting in their number one takeaways, there was a question here in the chat that I think could be interesting on this front half, was that let's say you have not gotten the approval, or the offsite has not actually been approved or even initiated yet. Have you had any experience working with chiefs of staff on bringing an offsite to an executive or the executive team or leadership team to justify like this is why we should do it? Is there anything that you could speak to there about like bringing the proposal to even have an offsite in the first place?
Yeah, great question. Just talking to someone. There's different reasons for an offsite. Let's see if we can go back to a good this really like the objectives and the timing question here. Sometimes it's going to be obvious, like strategic planning is much easier to do at an offsite, and there are multiple business methodologies that preach having offsites. If you look at like the scaling up methodology, which is what they teach at EO, which is a big like CEO peer group, they encourage quarterly offsites and an annual all hands meeting. Like there's a rhythm of business that this goes into. It's not new post pandemic. We've always been doing this. And I guess the word offsite comes from like taking the team offsite to think strategically about it from your office. So it's kind of weird that like the word offsite is what we named our company because there's no sites anymore, but like, I'm not going to talk about that too loudly. Because it was an expensive domain. But yeah, there's other reasons like, that might seem counterintuitive, but like if you've experienced a layoff recently, or a planning one, it's really important to take care of your stay team. And really engage them. And so it might feel painful to then be planning and spending on an offsite. But what is the alternative? Like to have your stay team not be engaged and not be aligned on what the strategy is moving forward. Then there's, again, other parts of your cadence that you can think about, like, are you a sales heavy organization and can getting everyone together, like sort of give them the rah they need to have a great year ahead. And so if you're making the case, I would either, sort of consider as a normal rhythm of business thing, or if you see a particular issue coming about and you can see how not solving the issue will delay the company. Like if your product and engineering teams are not aligned, and you're just not able to solve the problems online, maybe you need to get everyone offsite. Or if your marketing and sales teams are sort of out of sync and not being sort of too creative in solving problems, like that might be a great opportunity for an offsite. There's all different reasons for it, but I would look at like sort of pain points you have in running the company and consider planning an offsite around that, or sort of rhythm of business and like how can we proactively build a better company and build a better culture is how I would think about this.
Perfect. Thanks.
Last
Jared.
result, the last resort could be, looking at what you used to spend on office space or what you currently spend on office space if your leases are about to expire, and sort of say, hey, like our lease is about to expire. We've been waiting for 4 years to get out of this damn thing. Let's make sure we set aside 10%, 20%, 50% of that budget towards offsites and sort of be proactive about that decision as well. Because planning offsites is definitely a lot cheaper than having office space and all the things that come with running an office. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question. I'm happy to talk more about it offline.
Perfect. Keep on going. I know we're only halfway, so I want to give you plenty of time.
All right. Actually, we wanted to talk about agenda creation. Cool. So yeah, every offsite's different. And so when we talk about creating an agenda, there's a lot of like what ifs and flexibility in what I'm about to suggest. There are some best practices that would work for most offsites. The first, from a logistics standpoint, is considering your travel in and travel out time, especially if people are flying. The airline industry is not too reliable these days. So, you want to make sure there's like at least a half a day where people have time to fly in. If flights get delayed, it's not going to impact any serious work. And like travel is stressful for some people. And so you want to give them, the ability to travel in, like sort of shift from their personal life into this new environment. Maybe they need a break to like take a nap, call home, things like that. Sort of like the Disney effect, before you enter the theme park, like you're going to be on the tram and like your whole mindset is going to shift because you're changing environments. You sort of want to create that effect for those people who are anxious, and for those people who are very excited to travel, like give them the chance to organically like catch up with some of their colleagues and absorb the environment. Same thing with travel out. So we want to be mindful of that. We want to add in lots of flex time because you may go over on sessions. People need breaks as well. So you want to think about that as well. And then you want to start each day and each offsite building trust and intimacy. So things like icebreakers are great for that. And then you want to end each day and each offsite on a high note. You never want someone to leave an offsite with a bad taste in their mouth because like you had a strategic planning session and like people got contentious. Like at offsite, we have a high candor culture, and that leads to very well-intentioned debates. We're very mindful that like it comes with a base layer of trust and respect and all that, like no gossip, but it leads to like idea meritocracy and like people duking it out. So like we need to make sure we like end the day on a high note. And so you want to think about all this for agendas. We have this free resource that Clara, maybe you could put in the chat as well. It's just one agenda template, but I think there's things here that could apply to other types of offsites and not just all hands. But this was based on a 135 person offsite that we did, 4 nights, 5 days, B2B SaaS startup. Yeah. And so you see day one, they were having, let's see if I can make this smaller actually. Yeah. So day one was their travel in day. There's nothing planned before noon. There was some check-in time, and you can use your pre-offsite feedback forms for like getting swag and like having people sign up for breakout activities if you want to plan that. So we sort of like put notes on how to integrate what you've been doing to plan the offsite, with how to run the offsite. We have our travel in and travel out recommendation here. Get your flex time. You got your welcome dinner, and then either just like unstructured time or maybe some sort of party or activity would be great to sort of kick off the show. And then day two, again, this is an all hands. So we have sort of like, I'm a big fan of like optional workouts and optional movements because you want to think about the state that someone's operating in when they're at an offsite. And so things like exercise, things like healthy food, things like adequate breaks are all really important. And so you may even want to tell your team like, hey, we're going to have the big party on day 3. Like, don't drink too much, the first night, like make sure you show up on time. So you want to consider that, share that with your team in communications, but then we like optional group workouts. You got to think about breakfast. Do you have meeting space in the venue, or do you have to walk to meeting space? In this case, they had to walk 5-10 minutes to a meeting space. Then we had State of the Union, coffee break. Then we had like all these different sessions that we explain in this resource. So one was sort of like a greatest challenges idea. I also what I call these hot seats in another agenda template, where basically like get a group of cross department individuals to tackle the company's biggest problem. And so you're getting people to think differently about how to solve that problem, and then you have multiple breakout groups all thinking about how to solve the problem in a different way. And so you can sort of bake some of those ideas into your meeting, again depending on your objectives for the offsite. Have a 4, 5, 6 hours of dedicated work, throw in some breaks, throw in some lunch, and you might have your fun. Volunteering is a great activity for more cost conscious companies, and also just a good thing to do at offsites. What better way to build trust and intimacy and sort of reflect your company values? So we recommend that as sort of an example activity that works at a lot of offsites. We recommend table questions at dinners or meals, and that works at most offsites. And so we threw some example questions here, but you guys are all really smart and can think about these and probably do this normally in your meetings. And then this company liked to party in particular, so they had like 2 marquee parties. So day 2 and day 4 were their parties, and like night 1 and night 3 were their sort of more chill nights. Some other ideas you might be able to take away. They actually interviewed a key customer at this offsite, so I think that's always a really good idea for an all hands meeting in particular, or if it's like a marketing or sales team meeting, you might want to bring in some customers or some investors, like a key board member or angel investor. Like I had an offsite last October in Miami, and there was definitely some like startup chaos going on. And so I invited like the 13th employee of Airbnb, who's one of our angels, and also the co-founder of a unicorn startup who had like sold his company to the unicorn and then got a co-founder title, which is really cool. But like they were able to speak to the team in a way that I wasn't able to, and be like, yes, startups are hectic. Like this is tame compared to what we did at Airbnb. It's tame to what we're doing at this other company. And so again, just some ideas. Here's your hot seats. And so even like break this down, and we'll do this with clients to sort of give them all the facilitation notes on how to run the sessions themselves. You could also bring in outside speakers or facilitators, which this speaks to. You might want to get a group photo or bring a videographer to sort of capture all the fun, use that for employer marketing. Another way to save money is sort of have a company-wide talent show if people want to opt in to sharing their talents. And you might have a DJ, you might have a yogi, and some other cool people on your team. You can sort of view the rest of this on your own time. But like, we love flex time. You can always eat into this if you're running late. We do recommend bringing in outside speakers and facilitators if you can afford it. Last day you sort of travel out time, and the offsite's not over until everyone gets home safely. So sort of just be monitoring that, make sure everyone's getting on their flights, etc., taking care of team members that have delays, and then you've had a successful offsite. I'll just keep going, Clara, unless there's any questions. I'll breeze through the rest of this. So logistics. This is the meme before the meme, as I like to say. Does anyone know what this is from? Hopefully. Yes, no. This is an easy one. Did we get it? Yes. Awesome. All right. Here's the meme. This is you. We're trying to make this less of you. I think it's okay for a chief of staff to sort of run to the biggest fires, but like offsite planning doesn't have to be one of them. And so, without a company like Offsite, like this is all the stuff that might go into planning an offsite. If you are going to take all this on, like do it in that sort of cadence to make sure you get it done in a properly time frame, and don't go nuts. But there's a lot that goes on with planning an offsite. And so we want to make this pretty relaxed for you. If you were to work with Offsite in the future, we have a dedicated client success team that helps plan all the offsites full time. Some of our competitors have like contractors they bring in, but all these people like plan offsites all day, every day. They half the team have their own like freelance offsite planning businesses with their own clients like Adobe and WeWork and Product Hunt and Brex. this hard work. And in that team retreat planning Slack community, you could talk to other chiefs of staff and other people leaders as well. It's like, think about how to plan offsites more effectively, or like get agenda ideas, or think through budgeting items. And so one of the big things you want to think about from a logistics standpoint at the offsite, if we're sort of going from planning it to like now we're at the offsite, how you facilitate these experiences is very important. And this is probably going to be you, unless there's some expertise from your co-founding team about facilitating, or if maybe someone on the team has expertise in facilitation. I used to be brought in to run like global marketing meetings for Fortune 1000 companies, and speaking is one skill set, but then facilitating is a whole nother skill set, to be able to like hold space in the room and like allow people to get their points in, and but also like stay on the agenda, but also know when to go into flex time. Some best practices, just for anyone that's sort of planning on their own, is to assign one person to lead the offsite. So it could be you, it could be someone else, to sort of be the MC. If you're a really large company, you might want like an MC, and then you want like someone behind the scenes, like interacting with the vendors to make sure they're showing up on time and sort of keep the run of show. You may want to consider hiring an outside facilitator or event production staff at minimum. If you choose the right hotel, like they should have event production staff for you. But you want to make sure you have like one point of contact in case something goes wrong. You want to make sure they're connected to all the other vendors, and like you're triple checking that your photographer is going to show up on time, and like any entertainers are going to show up on time, speakers, things like that. Another important role you want to set that people forget about is sort of a scribe or a note taker for the meeting. This one's really hard. Like from a product standpoint, like I'm thinking some sort of app in the future where people can like type in notes and it goes to like one source, and then maybe it syncs with your Asana or Notion in the future. But a lot of people are taking notes in pads, and then they're taking notes on their own computer. If there's going to be important general sessions, you want to have one person taking notes, and then you may suggest that one person per breakout group take notes, and then is responsible for sharing the notes back with you. So think through that, and then bring the energy, be positive. If you're running the show, or whoever's running the show, make sure they're super bubbly, because everyone's going to follow their lead. So when something goes wrong, not if. If someone's just like playing it cool and like, yeah, no big deal, like we're just going to do this thing and we're going to come back here, like we're going to change the agenda a little bit, like everything's going to be fine. At the end of the day, like you're giving people a paid vacation, plus they're seeing their colleagues, and you're probably like getting some really great things on the table. Like we just had our offsite 3 weeks ago, and we did OKR planning for Q3, and like the team is more aligned than ever. We're all jazzed, like and there was some like agenda flexibility in that because we were having productive conversations, but like we left with a very positive experience. And it didn't matter like if like the hotel was perfect, but if they weren't, like it didn't matter if like the cookies didn't show up on time, or like the coffee didn't have creamer. Like at the end of the day, like you're gonna have a great offsite if you're running the show. And then other than note taking, a lot of people forget about the follow-up. Of course, you want to make sure everyone gets home safely. You want to send that post offsite feedback form. If you get photos and videos, you want to sort of crowdsource that, or make sure you follow with your vendors. You got to sort of reconcile your budget and make sure you get a final number for it, and everyone's paid on time and all that fun stuff. You get receipts from the team and give them reimbursements. Ideally, you've like planned a cadence of offsites, and you can be like, thanks so much for joining us in New Orleans. Next time, join us in San Francisco in 6 months, and give them something to look forward to. And then, as you're running the business, like think about just referring back to those special moments you had together, and people will think fondly of those experiences, and then you're getting even more benefit, months and even years later from those offsites. So that's enough for me. So just to recap everything we talked about, plan ahead, because you'll save a lot of time and money. Leverage total spend at venues, so you could save even more money. We didn't talk too much about avoiding costly mistakes, but it was in the slides. I'm happy to share the slides with you after the fact But like, make sure to look at the contract is basically what this boils down to. Like, make sure you have conservative room blocks. If you're planning for like 50 to 60 people, like find a venue that you can book a 50-person room block at, but they have capacity, like, rooms for 100 or 200 people in a perfect world. That way you can always like add a few rooms, but you're not getting penalized if you overbook a room block and then have to pay for the extra rooms. Like, those could be very expensive mistakes. Or things like cutoff dates. You want to have like startup friendly cutoff dates for room blocks. You want to look at food and beverage minimums, like all that fun stuff. You want to run a process for planning the offsite, use your pre-offsite feedback forms, manage your team so it's a tight process. And then you want to think through, like, why are you having the offsite? How can you get as much ROI out of bringing your team together? Be intentional with your agenda, and then don't just have one offsite, plan many, live long and prosper. This is a nice person who said a nice thing about us. You can go to Offsite. Thanks to Clara and Ask a Chief staff. We'll give you a discount if you sign this month, 20% off. And yeah, happy to do a Q&A with the remaining 5 minutes. And then I'm very active in that Slack community, so you can also just like message me anytime.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jared. Everybody, please, a virtual round of applause for Jared and this wonderful presentation. Don't worry, we will send out these slides. So I know there's like a lot of really great information in there, those agenda templates, things like that. So we will get the slides from Jared and send them out in our follow-up. And also all the links that I dropped into the chat, I will pull those out and send them out in a follow-up email too. So don't feel like if you forgot something, or, allfly.io for whatever reason, we'll send those out. So I'll start with a question. I know we have 4 minutes here, but feel free to raise your hand using the Zoom function and we can call you off mute. But Jared, give us some of your favorite icebreakers that people do at offsites, because those are always can be super awkward, but what are some of your favorites you've seen work super well?
Yeah, a big one for us is like, what are you grateful for? I love asking that just to like start our Zoom all hands meetings every week. But then like the attitude of gratitude, it's always a good way to start a meeting. You can also do it at the end of a day or even the end of an offsite, particularly with a smaller team, like an executive team meeting, or if you do breakouts and sort of have people ask, and they're like 5 to 10 person breakouts. You could ask like, what was the highlight of the day for you, or what was the highlight of the offsite for you? And sort of, I call it, I heard it called, and I then reference it as conversational jujitsu. You can basically like encourage a positive energy in the room by asking a question that will elicit a positive response, unless you're dealing with Debbie Downers, in which point they probably shouldn't be on your team. But yeah, then you can get fun. Like Jake, who's one of my team members, will like ask the team, like, if you were a flavor of ice cream, like what flavor would you be and why? So you can like throw some silly ones in there. I'm a big fan of like getting personal, like in a respectful way, but you can ask like, pull up a photo on your phone and like tell me the significance of a photo. And like some people will share a photo of their family, some people will show you a photo of their dog, and like that's always really cool. So yeah, I guess one final thing for icebreakers is I would recommend having like one day earlier in the offsite, like the morning of day 2, which is the first full day, like have it be personal questions so you sort of build trust and intimacy. And then the second day could be like business related, like what's the number one thing on your mind for Q3, or what's the number one way we can help you do better in your role, things like that.
Awesome. Those are great ones. I love adding the personal aspect, right? It also helps build psychological.
There's some great icebreakers
safety
in the chat too. So good. Thanks for adding those, folks.
Perfect. Anybody have any questions they would like? Otherwise, I can go through the chat, but if you'd like to raise your hand to ask your question in real time, please feel free. Okay. What is here's the question that was in the chat as well. What's the best ratio for fun team building things to business objective type things?
The answer is it depends on your objectives for the offsite and your team, and like how often you're meeting. But if you actually want an answer, that's sort of like with the caveat of it depends. My old boss at 15.5, his name is Shane Metcalf. He was the co-founder and chief people and culture officer. Was sort of his last title before he left. He recommends like 1/3 team building, 1/3 business, and then 1/3 professional skill building, which could be like bringing in that outside speaker, facilitator. It could be certain training, things like that. But offsites are sort of the best way to infuse like training on leadership skills or empathy skills or like creative problem solving. Like there's a million things you could be teaching, whether someone on your team is the expert or you're bringing in an outside expert. But I know, in the chief of staff role, you're probably thinking about manager training and up leveling skill sets, and it's really hard to get buy-in for that in Zoom and like async. But offsites, you have a captive audience, so like could be a great thing to put into your agendas, especially if it's an all hands meeting or if there's like your leadership team and the ROI of like getting your C-suite execs to be more empathetic is sort of infinite. Yeah.
I like that. I like that 1/3, 1/3 approach. I think that's a really great way to think about it. So, Jared, where can people follow you? How can they get in touch if they're interested in learning more? I know we're at the top of the hour, so I want you to be able to plug and get connections.
Yeah. Offsite.com. I've been lazy about my personal email, but it's jared@joinoffsite.com. Eventually it'll be jared@offsite.com. I just got to switch it over. Or you can join our team retreat planning community. It's free. So teamretreatplanning.slack.com until I make it invite only. But it's not like we're talking about it so publicly that like people are just randomly joining. So yeah, email me, go to Offsite, make an account. Let me know if you want, our support planning any offsites, and we'll give you that discount. Join our community, and otherwise, we'll see you in San Francisco possibly at our happy hour on the 26th. I have a coffee meetup in New York. I think I tagged a few people on next Wednesday. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere, and hopefully Offsite isn't either. So yeah, thanks for your time.